Imagine you're walking home alone, through a thick, suffocating fog. Up ahead, a solitary lantern swings in the darkness. Relief washes over you. You whistle out to it, hoping for company on the lonely road. But the light doesn't call back. Instead, it turns, and begins moving rapidly, toward you. And by the time you realize, whoever or whatever is holding that lantern isn't human, you're already sinking into the black mud. Tonight, we journey to the treacherous, mist-shrouded wetlands of eastern England, a desolate landscape where, for centuries, the locals haven't feared the dark. No, in the Fens, you learn to fear the light. We're going to dive into the terrifying legend of the Lantern Men, but be warned. Before this video ends, I'll show you why the scientific explanation for these entities might actually be deadlier than the ghost story. It's a moonless night in November, 1890. A local farmhand named Joseph is taking a shortcut through Wicken Fen. The path is narrow, bordered on both sides by deep, stagnant pools of bog water. One wrong step means plunging into a freezing, muddy grave. Suddenly, a pale, yellowish light flickers to life about 50 yards off the path. It bobs up and down, like a man carrying a heavy lantern over uneven ground. Thinking it's another traveler who has lost his way, Joseph makes a fatal mistake. He puts his fingers to his lips and whistles to get the man's attention. The light instantly stops. It turns, and then it charges. It doesn't walk, it glides. It closes the 50 yards in seconds. Panic seizes Joseph. He doesn't run back down the path. He knows he can't outrun it. Instead, relying on a desperate local superstition, Joseph throws himself face first into the freezing mud, burying his mouth and nose into the dirt, holding his breath until his lungs burn. He feels a searing heat pass directly over the back of his neck. Joseph stays there, shivering in the freezing muck, for hours. Only when the sun begins to rise does he dare to look up. The light is gone. He survives to tell his terrifying tale to anyone who will listen. Joseph was lucky, but as we unpack the coroner reports from this era, we'll see that the bodies pulled from these very bogs paint a much more gruesome picture of what happens when you decide to run. To understand what attacked Joseph, you have to understand where he was. Before they were aggressively drained for agriculture, in the 20th century, the East Anglian Fens were a massive, labyrinthine wilderness of marshland. It was an isolating, dangerous place, and it was deeply superstitious. Locals called the strange, aggressive lights the Lantern Men. According to folklore, these weren't just random spirits. They were malevolent entities, often said to be the ghosts of men who had been murdered in the Fens, or demons specifically bound to the marsh. Their entire purpose was to lure unsuspecting travelers off the safe paths and into the deepest, deadliest parts of the bogs to drown. Now, you might think it's just an old campfire story. But look at the local death registers from the 1700s and 1800s. The Fens claimed hundreds of lives. Found, drowned, the coroners would write. Wandered off the path, lost in the mist. Why were so many experienced locals, people who had walked these paths their entire lives, suddenly wandering 50 yards straight into deep bogs in the pitch black? Something was drawing them off the path. But the Lantern Men weren't just a psychological trick of the mind. In a few moments, I'll reveal the terrifying physical evidence that convinced Victorian police these ghosts were leaving a very real, very tangible body count. By the late 19th century, educated men from London began venturing into the Fens, determined to debunk the Lantern Men. They brought with them the cold, hard light of science. They declared that the monsters hunting the locals were nothing more than ignis fatuus Latin for fool's fire. Today, we know it as the will-o'-the-wisp. Here is the scientific explanation. As organic matter dead plants, animals, and yes, sometimes people decays, in the oxygen-deprived environment of a peat bog, it produces marsh gas. This is a highly flammable mixture of methane, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and, crucially, phosphine. Phosphine is highly reactive. When a bubble of this trapped gas finally breaks the surface of the mud and hits the oxygen in the air, it can spontaneously combust. It creates a low-temperature, flickering flame that burns a pale yellow or blue. So, mystery solved, right? The locals were just seeing swamp gas. They weren't being hunted by ghosts. They were just getting confused by natural marsh lights, losing their bearings, and stepping into the deep water. Science tells us it's just gas. But if it's only a chemical reaction, how do we explain the terrifying, seemingly intelligent phenomenon that occurs when you try to outrun it? Stick around. Here's where the scientific explanation crosses over from reassuring to deeply unsettling. Think back to the folklore. The rules of the Lantern Men were highly specific. If you whistle, they will charge you. If you run away, they will chase you. If you lay face down, they will pass over you. If these are just balls of burning gas, Why do they behave like predators? The answer lies in fluid dynamics. A ball of burning marsh gas is incredibly light and sensitive to air currents. When a terrified traveler sees this glowing orb in the dark and turns to run, they create a slipstream. As you run, you pull the air behind you. This vacuum effectively drags the burning ball of gas right along your path. The faster you run, the faster the lantern man chases you, hovering right at your heels. And what about whistling? Whistling requires a sharp expulsion of breath, which violently disturbs the still, stagnant air of the fens. This sudden disruption in the air pressure causes the flame to dart, erratically, often directly toward the source of the disturbance. The East Anglian peasants didn't know about fluid dynamics or phosphine gas, but their survival instincts were scientifically perfect. If you lie flat on the ground, you stop moving the air. The slipstream breaks. The gas simply drifts over you on the ambient breeze, and eventually burns out. The terrifying truth is that the folklore was completely accurate. The fens were hunting people. It wasn't magic, it was physics. This scientific explanation seems to wrap the mystery up neatly in a bow, until you look at the diary of an early 20th century naturalist who saw something in the fens that defied all known laws of nature. Enter William Ferren. In the early 1900s, Ferren was a respected naturalist and entomologist. He spent his nights in the fens studying moths. He knew about marsh gas. He knew about fluid dynamics. He was a man of logic and science. But one night, while out on the water in his punt, Ferren observed something that completely shattered his scientific worldview. Ferren noted a strong, biting wind blowing from the east. The reeds were bending over completely. Yet, out on the water, a massive, brilliant, yellow sphere of light appeared. It wasn't drifting. It was moving deliberately, zigzagging across the water, as if searching for something. And most terrifying of all, it was moving directly into the gale force wind. Marsh gas cannot swim upstream against a heavy wind. A low-temperature flame cannot sustain itself in a gale. Ferren watched the light stop, hover over a specific patch of reeds, and then dart aggressively across the water, defying every law of physics he knew. He wrote in his journal that it moved with undeniable, calculated intelligence. Ferren packed up his equipment and never hunted moths in that part of the fens at night again. Today, the fens have been largely drained. The vast, terrifying wetlands of Joseph and William Ferren are mostly gone, replaced by neat, orderly farmland. The lantern men have faded into myth, their existence rationalized away by chemistry and atmospheric science, but there are still pockets of the deep fen left. Wicken Fen remains wet, wild, and untamed, and locals will still tell you that on a moonless, foggy night, if you find yourself walking alone near the dark water, whatever you do, don't whistle. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, but we'll keep digging regardless. If you have your own theories on this case, I'd love to read them in the comments below. Until the next mystery, sleep well, and keep watching the dark.